So the Minnesota Court of Appeals decided that Derek Chauvin should be charged for third-degree murder, and Peter Cahill's dismissal was unjust. And the Minnesota Supreme Court also sided with the State Court of Appeals. So yeah, tack on another charge. It kind of seems like they're going overboard. It's just going to add another charge that's just going to make them look bad because, okay, you have the second degree, you got third degree murder, both of those are murder, and then you got manslaughter on there. There's a lot of charges. There's not a lot of proof that the prosecution's going to have to get on this, but third degree murder is probably the best one that Chauvin could be potentially guilty of. It's just going to be a motherfucker to try and prove. So let's take a look at the development we have today. A third-degree murder charge against Derek Chauvin, an ex-Minneapolis cop. Oh, okay, that's who he is, obviously. Duh. Charged in the death of George Floyd, God rest his soul, up in that big club in the sky, providing security and breaking in after hours to rob a pregnant woman at gunpoint. God bless, God bless. Hennepin County Judge Peter Cahill restored the charge after initially dismissing it in October, ruling at the time that it did not apply to the case, Fox 9 reported, but an appeals court reversed Cahill's decision to toss the lesser murder rap last week, sending the case back to the jurist for reconsideration and delaying the start of jury selection in the closely watched case. Chauvin will now face trial on third-degree murder, second-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter charges over Floyd's police-involved death in May. What an eloquent way to say. You remember that time that the cop knelt on that dude's neck? Yeah, that cop's the Chauvin guy, so he got to get charged with something, I guess. Chauvin's defense team appealed the higher court's motion, but their motion was denied by the Minnesota Supreme Court on Wednesday, Fox 9 reported. Fox 9 is doing a lot of work. Looks like the New York Post is just doing their fair share of reposting. Third-degree murder in Minnesota, one of the few states to carry the lesser charge, is defined as causing the death of another by perpetrating an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life and without intent to kill. So it's a very convoluted way of saying manslaughter, which is covered by his second-degree manslaughter charge and should be superseded by his second-degree manslaughter charge. Keith Ellison, Attorney General of Minnesota, wanted to charge him with like first-degree murder and everything that he possibly can, a hate crime, and I don't know, end up just making an example out of him and locking the dude away for consecutive life sentences. I don't know. However many people's lives could have been negatively affected if George Floyd was still here among us. So yeah, that charge, if you're to just look at the body cam footage, if you are not to look at any of the other evidence surrounding the circumstance, you could see that as being, I won't say fair. You could at least see it applying to that scope, and then the prosecution would still have to prove it because there is, at least right now, still due process in the world. It's a better charge. I think the manslaughter charge is probably a little bit more accurate and fair, but this is the overplayed hand that's been dealt, so you gotta roll with those punches, I suppose. But all of this could have been avoided. It also could have been resolved a long time ago, and it was all held up because Bill Barr, former Attorney General, really, yeah, God, the more that comes out about him, the less I like him. I used to like him quite a bit, okay? He was strong on a couple of things, but yeah, the inner workings of his Justice Department were less than adequate, let's put it this way. And this one right here, yeah. Chauvin wanted to avoid all of this stuff, okay? Attorney General Barr quashed plea deal by fired officer Derek Chauvin in George Floyd death. As part of the failed plea deal, Derek Chauvin was willing to go to jail for more than 10 years. Yeah, he was going to take a lesser charge. Whoever was advising him at this point probably didn't let him know certain things were going to come out, and I just think that he was probably taking just as bad advice as you could possibly get. Maybe one of his advisors also worked on the Trump campaign. With that said, the fired Minneapolis police officer who held his knee to George Floyd's neck, I love the way NBC phrases that, it's called the recovery position in the Minneapolis Police Department's training manual, agreed to a plea deal to third-degree murder days after Floyd's death. Where have we heard that charge before? But then Attorney General William Barr rejected the deal. Why would he do that? Derek Chauvin and 3 other officers involved were fired the day after George Floyd's death on May 25th and later arrested. Chauvin faces second-degree murder charges and second-degree manslaughter charges and third-degree murder charges. Now, come on, update your February 11th article, NBC. What else are you guys doing? Not pumping out funny comedy shows? The other 3 are charged with aiding and abetting and are to be tried together this in the summer because my social distancing. The details of the failed deal were reported by the New York Times. A former Justice Department official confirmed the failed deal to NBC News, saying both politically appointed and career Department of Justice officials had rejected the deal. So it's both a deep state and an incompetence thing. You love to see it. His lawyers were trying to rush us, and we didn't want to be rushed, the official said. Something about the rush? Chauvin's lawyer, Eric Nelson, declined to comment Thursday. Cannot comment on an ongoing court case, blah, blah, blah. We get it. Spokesman for Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, who is leading the prosecution, said he could not comment because it covers a period before Ellison was assigned the case. But he was still making very loquacious comment without knowing nearly anything. But that's Keith Ellison's style. Remember when he was sworn in to be Attorney General for the state of Minnesota, he did so on a Quran because he's a great guy. Lacey Severance, a spokeswoman for Hennepin County Attorney's Office, which was handling the case at the time, said, as in typical cases, early negotiations can occur between all relevant parties involved. Many times the defendant will explore their options with a negotiation. It is also common for these types of discussions to happen in the beginning of the case and then have no agreed upon negotiations developed. This case was no different. Negotiations were discussed. Nothing happened. Well, it's weird when the Attorney General of the United States steps in. Don't you agree? As part of the deal, officials now say he was willing to go to prison for more than 10 years. Local officials, scrambling to end the community's swelling anger, scheduled a news conference to announce the deal. But then the deal fell apart. The Times reported, citing 3 law enforcement officials because Barr worried it was too early in the investigation and would be perceived as too lenient. Oh boy, can he not read a room? Barr also wanted to allow state officials taking over the case time to make their own decision, the Times reported, and they went the extremist route instead of the moderate route, instead of the fair route. Chauvin had asked to serve his time in a federal prison, and the deal was contingent on the federal government's approval because Chauvin wanted his assurance he would not face federal civil rights charges, the Times reported. Remember how I was saying Keith Ellison was saying things about hate crimes need to be charged? Yeah, that's why. That's why. It would be highly unusual for the Justice Department to agree in advance to stop a civil rights investigation and forego any possible federal prosecution before state proceedings had fully played out. The incident involving Floyd was recorded by a bystander and widely shared on social media. Here's NBC's little line. I'll link the article, and I ain't gonna read their propaganda because nobody knows propaganda quite like NBC. But it's always nice to read a different source, and at least they got the facts right on this one. Barr intervened because it would have required federal approval for Chauvin to serve time in a federal prison. Now, why would he want to do that? Because the guy who is responsible for all of the riots, not my opinion, but the way that prisoners could perceive that in state jail or state pen in Minnesota, would definitely see it that way. Potentially people who were locked up as a result of those riots could be in the state pen, and he would not want to be in with those people. And you know what I mean by those people? The Polish. So it'll be interesting when this trial does develop, if this plea deal is going to come up, if this is something that's going to be used by the prosecution. Listen, he thinks he's guilty because he wanted to cop a plea deal. Well, there are many reasons to try to cop a plea deal. Because you think that the evidence is mounting against you, which is what the prosecution can say. And then at the other side, it could also be Chauvin's case where, okay, his wife divorced him. The dude doesn't have a job or a career anymore. He's really kind of on the skids at the moment. And he might sense that the acquittal, and I'm being incredibly generous on this one, I understand, that the eventual acquittal at the end of this, or even maybe being convicted on one of the lesser charges, could result in something even more terrible than what we've seen over the summer. The time will tell, but this case is developing very strangely. The only thing that's going well so far is the jury selection. A lot of people are getting tossed out. I think they are on like 40 different jurors at this point. I don't know who's been selected, but they've all been tossed out for very real and understandable reasons. Either they're supremacist on either side. If they're really gung-ho Black Lives Matter Antifa types, there has been one. Or they're very much back the blue and going to be totally impartial to everything that the prosecution would bring out, which would most likely just be a plea to emotion. So I don't know what else is going to come out. I thought we'd be able to put this on the back burner for a couple of days, but yeah, found this out. Found out that the new charge has been, well, I guess what's old is new again. It's a third-degree murder charge, and it was worth updating on. And with that said, I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.